Who's the brave soul to ask the first question here today? Yes.
Yes, this one's for Mr. Onder. So you're talking about the developed countries that have like falling fertility rates. Do you think that has anything to do with like kind of like the globalized culture that we're starting to see in the world, or has it been starting since before globalization really started kicking in?
Do we do this? We
Yeah.
take the question?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. So I'm an economist, right? I usually don't like talking about culture. I have a rational explanation why people do that. It might perhaps be related with the income levels of people. And given the opportunities that you could work in your life, and given the benefits that you could get from working, which means that your salary, perhaps it becomes more costly to bear a second child or the third child. That's one, the opportunity cost aspect. And the second aspect is actually maybe bearing the child will become, in terms of just the accounting costs, it will not be higher in the developed countries. And of course, there are so many dimensions in the decisions of having a baby or not. This includes the females' increase in labor force participation. And this includes the availability of the social security system. In developing countries, people make babies to take care of themselves when they're old. So given all this, the factors that goes into decision making, probably it's a combination of all of that stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a demographic that I'll share with you based on the latest 2010 census. And this is unbelievable statistics when you really think about it. In 1960, young people between the ages of 25 and 34, you might not think that's particularly young, but people between the ages of 25 and 34, 80% were married, okay? In 2000, 55% were married, and in 2010, 45%. So people are getting married a lot later, which also adds into that. There's less years to bear children in those years for people that still think that you need to be married to have children, because that demographic is changing also. So more people have children that are not married, but still the statistics have really changed there. And so I think that has a lot to do with the reduction in the population growth. Other questions? Yes.
This is for Dimitri. Do you think we're borrowing more just to pay off the other bondholders? Like, do you think it's a bubble in itself, like the T-bills?
Well, it really depends on how you define the bubble. We're borrowing more because we're not willing to change the system to accommodate for all the retirees, higher medical costs. We're borrowing because we're just not willing to accommodate those changes, and we're stuck with the design of 1930s where we're just not willing to pay for the design of 2010. It's just it's a political stalemate. I don't even think economists are divided on how do you reduce the debt. It's just unwillingness to take politically unpopular steps, just like Karim was saying with age. Nobody wants to move the retirement age, nobody wants to reduce benefits, and nobody wants to access have more than well. So it's just
and that really gets to a question, what he just referred to as to the voting power. And this is encouragement for all of you to start voting and cast your vote, because right now, the overwhelming people that vote are senior citizens. And are they going to vote to have their income reduced, or at least the growth rate flat? And so if you people start voting, you can affect that, because it doesn't make sense. And we talked about this, he briefly said about the retirement age. We have people living 4, 5, 6, 7 years longer But our retirement age has only gone back about a year for Social Security. It's basically going from 65 to 66. So all those people are collecting Social Security so much longer than they did before. And that is having the largest effect on, our economy. So, and the other interesting trend among your age people is what's happening. People that are working a little longer now, you people, more of you than ever before, are going back to live at home after you graduate because you're getting married later. You go back, you live at home, and so you don't have the expenses, and because there's not as many jobs as there was previously. So if you change that, the longer people work, because whether you're in a strong economy or weak economy, the finite number of jobs are going to be there in either case. And the longer people work, the less jobs there are for younger people. So I guess I would ask you from a productivity standpoint, you talked about productivity. Do younger people or older people produce more? I mean, that's a social decision that you all want to talk about. And would we be better off having older people working longer or younger people in terms of productivity? So these are huge social questions that we need to address as we go forward. Yes?
So this is just sort of a general question, but because interest rates are so low, if you account for inflation, some of these yields are actually negative. So how much of an issue is this with what China's purchasing?
Chinese, we have an interesting relation with Chinese. It's more of a, going back to people getting sick and all that. This is more or less the relationship you have with the oxygen machine. We need them and they need us. So my estimate, negative yields are not going to stop them from buying this.
I didn't get how the oxygen machine made you.
Well, there's no purpose in the machine if you're not.
Yeah, I mean, even though the ultimate yield could be negative, I mean, if you want to say that you're going to keep a certain amount of your money safe, at least the principal is thought to not be at risk, where other types of risk, you could lose principal, which we found out back in 2007. So there may be a certain part of that portfolio that they're willing to take a negative return just to protect the amount of principal that they have at risk. Other questions? Yeah.
This one's for Dimitri, and I guess Mr. Aliari could probably give a comment on it. I thought it was really interesting how you were saying like the smaller countries have a lot, like the investors are a lot more unforgiving with them. So we all saw how Greece, 200% of its GDP owed debt, and it kind of crashed there. And everybody was in huge panic about it. But it's really only the size of Ohio, pretty much. So do you think that the scare to investors worldwide was a lot more than the actual damage it did to the euro or to the worldwide economy?
Well, I want to first clarify, by small I mean small economically, I don't mean geographically. Some countries, Japan is not very large geographically, but it's very important economically. I think also the issue of investors being more forgiving to large economy. If you're really, really concerned about the United States defaulting or United States economy collapsing, this de facto equals world economic system collapsing. And the only safe investment then is the food rations in your bond shelter. So that's just, and it's very different for Greece. I mean, Greece could go the way of Argentina and they won't.
So, Europe is a strange place from a financial standpoint. It has a unified currency, but each country operates in their own sovereign debt and has their own sovereign debt. While Greece's economic impact wasn't substantial to either the Eurozone or the worldwide economy, it demonstrated what Dimitri had pointed out, that this overweight in debt relative to GDP is a problem. So first investors started looking around and saying, okay, what other countries have this same systemic problem? Well, Italy, Spain, it just started to ripple out of Greece, the same issue, maybe at a lesser degree. The second component of that, and Europe is still facing it, is that the banking systems are independent per country, but Europe, if you're a European in Italy, you can bank in Greece. And like this country or any other country, you're going to go where either interest rates are more favorable from a savings standpoint or a lending standpoint. So what had happened is a lot of Italians were banking in Greece, and a lot of Spaniards were banking in England. Once the banking system became so fragile, people really started to worry. And like our banking system through 2007, 2008, you could see what could happen if a bank collapsed in one of these countries. So combination of those two impacts made it a lot more severe than just looking at it as Greece as a country and their global impact to GDP.
Yeah, and that issue is not unlike the issues you have with banks, globally. Is any one bank standing by itself, you wouldn't necessarily think it would be that big of a risk, but it's the interdependencies that they all have on each other, and if one fails, it can set off a chain reaction that you have many, many more fail. So that is the issue, is the tremendous interdependencies we have across all of these organizations. And that's one of the big risk issues that everybody's trying to manage now better, is to understand these interdependencies, because they clearly were not understood back in the meltdown in 2008, how one would affect another. So the regulators really, really watch that closely now. We have to do all kind of reporting to the regulators we never did before, based on interdependencies that we have with each other. And Europe was a good example of that. Other questions? I think I'm going to get cut off here shortly. Okay, just one final comment, and then we want to thank our panelists here today. We talked a lot today. There was about challenges that you all have and that our country has and so forth. But don't ever forget, for every challenge there's an opportunity, and we got tremendous opportunities here. And in the United States, the two that come to my mind is, first of all, our natural resources. We have tremendous untapped energy capability that, if managed effectively, we can become a supplier of energy to the world instead of a net user of energy. So to me, that is our greatest opportunity that we have in the future. The other one is our educational system, technology, capabilities, the things that we can do with less people to become more productive. And your discussion about how technology affects labor and the offset, and it's not clear. Clearly, we can be much more productive with the better use of technology, but that takes well-trained people. And as I look at our bank, as much as you hear about unemployment, we, right now, in our organization, we have probably 30 types of jobs, and we're just a financial institution, that we can't find qualified candidates for. The jobs are there, but the quality of people aren't there. So what we need to make sure is that we educate ourselves. Take that extra time that you're going to live at home with your parents, make sure you continue to get the education so that when you go for the job, that you're going to be able to compete with the workforce out there. Because there are jobs available, it's just we don't have the right match between the skill sets of the people and the jobs that are available. So, thanks, you've been let's give our panel a great